Lily, come in. There you go. Hey guys, I'm coming to you on a kind of cold, rainy day, trying one more time to make an actual honest-to-goodness reading vlog. And today, I'm going to be reading Brother by Ania Ahlborn. Historically, I find Ania Ahlborn's work to be either acceptable. This book is good, but it is too long. Specifically, it is overly repetitive. Or extremely disappointing. Next is The Bird Eater by Ania Ahlborn. I DNF'd this, which kind of sucks because I was really enjoying it. It's got like spooky haunted house, deeply atmospheric vibes. And then there's this moment where this guy who's set up to be the ghost hunter, they ask him to do the ghost hunting and he refuses and has a bunch of self-depreciating moments. And I just was done. No more listening for me, and no more Ania Ahlborn for a long time. And then in February, I noticed that Brother happened to be on Kindle Unlimited. A ton of booktubers talk about how Brother is like the defining work of Ania Ahlborn that made them really fall in love with her. Like, I know Tangible Reads has mentioned it before, and I know more recently Naomi has talked about it in the Women in Horror group, and specifically she said she wanted a reading vlog of someone reading Brother for the first time, which I know she wasn't talking to me, she was talking to other panelists who hadn't read Brother yet. But here we are, it's still a good idea, and I'm gonna see if I have any fun reactions for once. Editing Jess here, trying to provide a little color commentary to what seems to be an overly long getting settled montage. Reading with dogs is not an easy task, and it is especially not easy when the book you're reading is not grabbing your interest. I think I say when my voiceover comes back that it has been a half hour. It has been way more than that. Even though we're starting with Brother right in the thick of it, as the cannibal serial killing family is murdering another victim, it is not grabbing me. So you're gonna catch me pausing reading this book to download a timer app, and then I'm gonna try to force myself to read for 35-minute sprints before talking to the camera. Did not think this video out very well. Probably should have quit reading this book and perhaps quit making this vlog, but I persisted, so here we are. I am super ungenerous to Ahlborn throughout this whole vlog situation, and I want to throw in here that on reflection, this first chapter and all of her first chapters for that matter do really well with what I call the mini adventure, where they throw you immediately into the action, they deliver on what the summary promised, and that's way more than I can say for a lot of books where the first chapter is just god awful and I'm super impatient to get to whatever it is the summary caught my eye with. I think possibly telling the story about the hillbilly serial killer cannibals from the perspective of the hillbillies, or an adopted member of the clan, is just not the right way to go with this kind of story. I love The Hills Have Eyes, which is pretty much this, only from the perspective of the victims. The thing about it is trying to create a connection between the serial killer hillbilly cannibals is really hard to do, and it's much easier to create some kind of emotional connection, some tension, some sense of stakes when we're looking at it from the perspective of future victims. I do think Ahlborn took on a lot more ambitious project than other people do with this story, but this first chapter is not bringing me in. I have more questions than answers, and not necessarily in a springing my curiosity kind of way. Okay, so I've been reading about a half hour. This book has not snared me so far. I know it's about serial killers and this one family member who doesn't feel like they belong with the family of serial killers. So far it's not very relatable, and it's not gross or intense enough to make me feel anything in that regard either. I am only in chapter 2 right now, so Michael has helped capture a girl that was trying to escape, he has helped steal some liquor, he's cleaned up that girl's remains, and right now we're in the middle of a confrontation between his father Wade, him, and his brother Rebel, where it looks like Rebel is about to get his butt kicked. Maybe learning about some of the punishments that these people dole out, or the intensity they have, will help me feel more invested and a better sense of stakes, but so so far I just am like on that poor girl who died side. Like, I'm thinking about her trying to win Michael over, trying to like convince him the two of them can get free together, and Michael like rejecting her and forcing her back in for the sake of the family. A family that so far it seems like he's pretty afraid of. Maybe they have a more complicated relationship than I know, but right now it seems basically like Rebel holds Michael's fate in his hand, so Michael has to be nice and passive to him. And likewise, he also has to work not to piss his dad Wade off, or his dad will do something to him. His mother seems a little bit more like a mysterious figure, and his sister Misty seems a little bit more removed from everything that's going on. Question in the back of my head, to what end is this family going to stay together? Eventually these kids are going to grow up and leave the house and want to start their own lives with wives and kids of their own. The family can't let them go after they participated in all this and know all this information. So they're all kind of like bound together by this secret. It just feels very unwise and unwieldy at the end of the day. In this reading session, I go through chapters 2 to partway through 7. A couple things I never address in this reading vlog is how jarring the back and forth in time element is. My general opinion on books that have to tell a story out of sequence, they don't really have that great a story to start with. To a certain degree, I think Brother definitely falls into this trap. The more engaging elements of this story are all in the back in time when everyone is a kid and growing up with the Morrows. Although our first introduction to this is in chapter 3 and it is super jarring. Now on my Kindle e-reader, I have the dyslexia font turned on. I don't always know what the font actually looks like, but when we jump back in time, the font does change. So at least I had that one like signal indicator. These back in time scenes like introduce an extra element of confusion and mixed motives to our cannibal hillbilly serial killers here. And perhaps that's another issue that makes this kind of setup not work for me, where something like The Hills Have Eyes does. Because in The Hills Have Eyes, the serial killer element is very focused. It's like these hillbillies living off grid in the woods, they're incestuous, they have like permanent brain damage. Doesn't really matter like if the isolation drove them crazy or the inbreeding did or all of it combined to do something awful. But here the Morrows, while isolated, are able to drive into town like within an easy 30-minute drive. We come to find out a little bit further in they're still connected to their grandparents. Wade is like an honest to goodness person, like he's a Vietnam vet, so that means these people have interacted with society fairly recently. Their level of isolation is immediately obscured. It's like we don't have enough weird, odd, off-putting things going on with them. Now they're picking up stray dogs, allowing their kid to murder them, have nothing to say to that. And to replace that stray dog, they end up abducting a child. And maybe this is my issue coming into the story, because I'm here trying to profile these people, trying to get like some kind of logic where maybe the story is about crazy is as crazy does, and they're just wild, unpredictable, and that's supposed to be like the horror of it. But like my interest in seeing something from the cannibal serial killer perspective is to understand them and for there to be more horror in getting to know them than there is in obscuring them in mystery. And to that end, I don't feel like Ania Ahlborn executes well. Okay, so I have hit chapter 7 now. Still not super in love with this story. I am going to keep reading because I feel like it's probably a slow burn where like the details are going to sort of reveal themselves with time. As it is right now, we've learned that there was a third biological child with this like cannibal couple. It seems like she was killed, probably trying to help Michael in some way, shape, or form. Also, Reb is really insistent on stalking this older woman. So I guess there's a couple of little mystery pulls there that I'm curious about. None of them necessarily have to do with Michael or like what he's going through. Right now there's more confusion than there is general intrigue or interest. Nothing too shocking has happened so far. It's sort of more or less what I expected from like Appalachian serial killer cannibals. I don't think we're supposed to know that the meat is probably people meat at this juncture, but I feel like it's pretty obvious from the descriptions and the complaints about taste and all that kind of stuff. That's probably what's going on. I'm curious about the grandparents' house, not because I think it's a real place, but it does call to mind the fact that this lady had a mom and dad, or maybe Wade had a mom and dad at some point in time, and I wonder if this is a tradition they're carrying on from that point in time. A little bit more about the family history might explain what they expect their kids to do when they grow up. I think it would also be helpful for me to know how old Rebel and Michael and Misty are, but since we don't don't know that information just yet. I'm gonna assume they're like in their teens. I wanna take a break from reading, have some lunch, and then I guess I'll come back to you guys. So at the risk of being overly spoilery, I found elements of this to be kind of like needlessly gross. For example, it seems like Rebel has an incestuous infatuation or obsession with his older sister Laura Lynn, and just like, why? He could have had like a special connection to her because of the trauma they had, because the two of them were older and more cognizant of what was going on and therefore reacting to it in a more aggressive manner than their younger sibling was. And all of that could have worked together to create like a state of desperation and kinship without including something that I think ultimately doesn't matter in this narrative. Additionally, there's a scene where we see Laura Lynn being abused by her grandfather, and I don't know why that scene or particular detail was included. I guess part of what we're trying to explore in this novel is why these serial killers and cannibals are the way they are. And this starts with the mother who was essayed as a child, and perhaps the essay of Laura Lynn is to show that that grandfather is still doing the bad things, quote unquote proof that this actually happened. But I don't know that we needed any of that. And in the continuation of this nurture versus nature, it seems like both Laura Lynn and Misty Dawn, the two girls, are not born bad where Ray/Rebel is. And then of course we have the other child, Michael, dropped into this environment and never picks up the same psychotic tendencies that Ray has. It seems to be pointing towards the fact that women only become evil as a result of horrible trauma, while some men are just born this way, but they'll rise above a bad environment if that's not within their nature. I don't like any of the subtext here. I don't like the messaging. I don't understand why it's here or what it's trying to do. A lot of it I think we could have done without and still had like the Machiavellian plot of Ray like lying in wait and then spending a very long time to get like this quote unquote proper revenge on Michael. I'm in chapter 8 and we learn that Reb is 23. And I think that Mike is 4 years younger, so that puts him at 19. I have to assume that Missy is in between there somewhere. We still don't know for certain what happened to the eldest sister. I'm going to assume that she was killed. I'm starting to think that Reb killed her in a fit of jealousy for how she was treating Mike. And I'm also starting to believe that Reb's obsession with the woman they're stalking and with the two young girls is related to Mike. Like, I guess this older woman they're looking at could be his mother, and the reason he's so at peace with the songbirds in the hollow is because he has like subliminal memories from when he was a child there. I am wondering if Reb is trying to sleep with one of Mike's sisters, or if he's trying to convince Mike to sleep with his sister, and that's like the young girl that he keeps calling Snow White. We'll see if any of these predictions pan out, but I just want you guys to know right now that's where like my worst case scenario is at, so the story has to go further than that if it's gonna make me like really outraged or come give you guys shocked face in the camera. Okay, still in chapter 8, Michael has gone into the music shop. He is talking to Alice. She just introduced herself and they're talking about whether or not he's a singer. Worried about where the flirtation is going. Really am suspecting they might be related. I'm also a little bit curious about the woman who has the same blonde hair as the rest of the family. Since we learned, I think in the last chapter, that the grandparents are real and that they're gross. More questions than answers now. Maybe my simple assumption that the oldest sister was dead was inaccurate. So I just finished the flashback scene of Wade saving Michael's life from the cherry bomb, and I'm kind of confused. What does Wade care if his real son kills the kid they stole? They're already killing people, so I guess I don't understand why it's okay for the mom to kill people, but it's not okay for Reb to kill people. Why specifically Michael is off limits. I'm not even really sure why they stole this kid to start with and why they're valuing him. But so far, like, everything in the narrative to this point seems to indicate that Wade likes this child for some reason, cares for them in some way, shape, or form. For me, that's throwing an interesting wrench in this narrative. Definitely a little bit more hooked now than I was a few updates ago, but I still don't really know how I feel about what this narrative is trying to tell me, and I'm not 100% convinced it's going to be able to take that shock or wow factor there for this ending reveal. Here in chapter 11, Michael is wondering about his father and calls him his adoptive father, which means that Michael remembers he's not blood related to these people. I don't know why. I assumed when he was abducted at 4 and integrated into the family, he just assumed that he had always been there and this is the life he'd been born into. It does make him feel a little bit slower with these trips going into his old hometown and him not realizing that something is up, something is weird, especially because in all these flashbacks, I'm seeing that Reb has been consistently trying to kill or maim him. If I were this person, I would be a lot more suspicious and wondering what kind of game he's playing between like my old life and my new life. Even if for some reason I thought my old family had abandoned me or discarded me, or like this other family had been really good to me to take me in, it's very suspicious that Reb is disobeying Wade in a way specifically putting me back into this old hometown. In a lot of ways, this is making me like and empathize with Michael less. I think I'm supposed to see that he's the only person here with a conscience or feelings or empathy or like an interest in reaching out to these other like obviously insane people, but it's just making me think that he's being really dumb and unguarded, and if he grew up in this sort of scenario, he should know to be afraid and very guarded. I'm in chapter 15 after the movie scene and when Michael starts drawing characters to sort of emulate what Alice is doing. And I am more positive than ever based off of Reb's reactions that he is trying to set his brother up to date his sister. Especially because Alice's mom being described as like perpetually sad sounds like someone who never recovered from the loss of their first child. Possibly didn't tell Alice, or if she did share that loss with Alice, it's not something Alice wants to burden this rando with. Okay, so we've got the official memory of what happened to the oldest sibling. Looks like Mama did kill her. Michael had been sent out hunting. He'd been having a dry spell. He killed one of the rabbits and accidentally set the others free. And the oldest sister blamed the mother for it, which put her into a fit of rage for unknown reasons that resulted in her murder. And I suppose in that way, Ray blames Michael for her death and also kind of like blames himself a little bit, but there's nothing he can do to himself. So that's part of why he's been torturing Michael like this, I assume. But this is an awfully long time for the kid to hold a grudge. Like, why has he waited this long to do something? I'm also assuming that the woman they abducted is actually Michael's mom. We'll probably get confirmation of this and my theory that Alice is another sibling if Alice says her mom is missing. Although since they don't talk, I'm not sure she'd even realize she'd gone missing. Welcome back. It's the second day of me reading Brother by Ania Ahlborn. I took the weekend, got some gardening done. Today is a beautiful sunny day with my windows open, so you might be hearing some background noise. Where we left off was with the main character about to process what I believe is going to be his mother's body. I want to say that I've been kind of uncharitable to the book up until now, sort of like underwhelmed or whatever, and that's not entirely fair. I do think the story is trying to go as dark and as graphic as possible. The issue here is the only way that any of this could shock me is if we find out that like Meryl / Michael is like the bad guy or like is consciously doing these awful things. That said, the writing is fairly competent, and I think if just these acts in and of themselves still scare or shock you, then this could be a good read. I do think it's kind of weird that Michael gets turned on by new dead bodies. Perhaps this is like the indication where things go south and Michael starts to become really messed up and weird. He manages to pull it back by thinking about Reb like forcing himself on this woman while she was alive, and like through that conduit forcing himself on Alice, and all of that doesn't seem interesting to him, so I guess that's good, but that's like the bare minimum. And I think also part of the bare minimum is not being turned on just by dead body parts of people. Like, I can't think of a situation where I'd be viewing a corpse clothed or not clothed and be like, that person is hot. I assume this is going to be part of the disturbing element, especially because I am assuming this woman is his mother. This actual field dressing of the human body is making me a little queasy, but like dissembling any once living creature into its parts like this sort of grosses me out. I don't actually feel more gross about it because it's human, and it's not like shocking or surprising to me that Reb attempted to make a leather jacket out of a woman's skin, or that he was bad at it and failed miserably. The dynamic with Misty Dawn is perhaps the most interesting thing because it seems like she's horrified by all of the killing in the body parts and stuff. I'm not sure if we're supposed to read that as generic girl squeamishness, the same way I'm squeamish about like butchering a cow or whatever. This is her equivalent. Something else that's striking me as Michael and Reb prepare to go back into Dervish to talk to the girls, it seems like all of his guilt, or the vast majority of his guilt, stems from the fact that he has a crush on Alice and would like to get together with her, and he feels bad about what he's done specifically because he would like to be with her. Not really a positive sign for his moral character or ethics. Here's an interesting thing. Now he's talking about the possible life he and Alice could have together where he makes an honest living, except when he goes back to visit Wade and Mama out of a sense of guilt. So being with them and helping in their serial killing is making him feel guilty and awful, but leaving them also makes him feel like he's abandoning responsibilities or people who need them. And the fact that he's thinking that he could be married to Alice and live an honest life and also like straddle these two worlds and go visit Wade and Mama and help them sometime strikes me as very Crimson Peaks coded. If you've seen that movie, you know what I'm talking about. Ooh, I like this line. Alice says, sometimes things only make sense in retrospect. You don't know what you're looking at until you know what happens next. And then you have to go back to the beginning and see the signs. I think that is great foreshadowing potentially for what's going to happen in this book. I am here trying to solve the mystery when the pieces are still being given to me, and I'm kind of like jumping the gun and making assumptions, but I do feel like this could potentially be the sort of book where after I know the plan for realsies, I have to go back and look at all the little subtle tells and notes. That's one of my favorite pro-spoiler arguments, is that like the suspension of disbelief is not hindered by the fact you know what's going to come. Knowing how the story ends and knowing all the patches means that you can be freed up to actually look at what's going on and how people are telling you the story and notice all these cool things you wouldn't otherwise see. Get a good lore drop here. Find out the first time Michael was forced to dismember a dead woman was at 10. If they got him at 4, that means they waited about 6 years to enter him fully into like their cult of killing. Oh guys, the way Alice sort of shuddered when Michael said that he was gonna turn 20 this year definitely is his sister. Oh no. Oh no. Oof, that night they're eating the beef stew and Reb gives Michael extra servings. Yeah, that other woman was definitely his mom, and this beef stew is definitely the remains of his mother. Oof, he's really enjoying the parallels between when they tried to eat the rabbit and he was punishing his older sister, and now him being able to give the same just desserts to Michael. Certainly interesting that even before Michael gets his second helpings, he notices the beef stew tastes good. Better than normal, I would assume, since before he was complaining about Mama's cooking and how he usually doesn't like the meat. I assume this is here specifically to be disturbing, but it is weird that he made note that usually he doesn't like the meat and this time he does. I'm wondering if this is a little bit of like the twist from the alone time. Alright, so I'm on chapter 22. We just witnessed Michael's sister Misty getting killed, which kind of sucks because I was curious about how she fit into all of this. I guess the answer was that she was a bargaining chip to kind of like force Michael to do what he was told, all the way up until she stopped Michael from doing what Rebel wanted, and in that situation, he got Misty killed. An interesting choice. I guess it implies that Rebel doesn't care at all about Misty. He only ever cared about his oldest sister. I don't know how true that is, if Rebel's gonna be lonely when all of this is done, what exactly the deal is, because it certainly seems like Rebel does feel feelings and he does care about some things some of the time. He just like has poor impulse control or whatever. I think too Rebel hasn't considered that Misty getting murdered is not gonna make Michael feel particularly amorous, but as of right now, regardless of whatever gore I just read, I am starving and I'm about to go take a lunch break, so I'll catch you guys later. Back from lunch and I'm looking at chapter 22, realizing I am 71% through with Brother by Ania Ahlborn. It's occurred to me that maybe this book is supposed to be like the frog that starts off in the cold pot of water that slowly hits a boiling. We don't realize anything is wrong until it is too late to save us. Maybe what's about to go down in this back 30% is going to be just the worst. Certainly, like, if I were Michael and I had been on the fence about anything until this point, escaping Reb at all costs would be top priority at this point. Probably just abandoning everything, including Alice, would be the best way to go about it, because then he'd have no way to track me down and he'd have no leverage over me via Alice. Especially because Reb made that joke about how Lucy is exactly their mom's type, like for murdering, which was something I had thought about. Like the fact that she has the same like sandy blonde hair the entire family except for Michael has made me wonder if possibly she was related to them in some way, shape, or form. But I guess it makes equal amount of sense that Reb would cozy up to someone he knows he could dispose of easily if they don't do as he wants. Ooh, we're in first page of chapter 22, and this is the first twist I've seen in the road, where Reb is posing as Michael for the woman Bonnie. Reb was meeting her on the regular, claiming to be Michael. So that potentially leads an extra layer of anguish for poor Bonnie when he comes in, assaults her, and then abducts her for her grim murder. I don't necessarily know that it means anything for Michael, though, or his fate, and since we already know Bonnie is dead, I'm not quite sure where we're going with this, but it at least suggests that there's an extra layer of complication going on in the story, and maybe there's a twist coming around the bend that I'm going to be shocked by. Oof, Reb has been visiting Bonnie every week for nearly a year before he offers her up to her mom. That's wild. Reb's danger factor has just gone up like 4 notches in my estimation. I'd considered him both psychotic and impulsive up until this point, mainly doing things on whims to please himself, but the fact that he had enough self-control to go every week and visit her to maintain this kind of cover story, that's a lot. And I'm really wondering what the end goal is here. Like, suddenly it feels like Bonnie matters a lot more than I thought she did. Also, come to think of it, him visiting Bonnie every week for a year, even if Bonnie is kind of like isolationist, is sort of a big risk for him to then have her killed by his mom. There is always a possibility that other people have seen him coming and going from this house before Bonnie mysteriously disappears. And if they have any kind of like facial sketch of him as a person of interest in Bonnie's disappearance, that could be really bad for both him and the family as a whole. So that reframes the scene where Bonnie exclaims Michael's name as he comes in the door. It looks like she was talking to Reb and not to the Michael we know, but I'm not really sure how that changes the scene or changes the end results in any meaningful way. At this point in time, I'm really hoping there'll be something because I've been sort of and I can't even really think what the point would be of Reb pretending that he was Michael is, unless the plan here is to get Michael trapped for Bonnie's disappearance / murder and sent away to jail forever. But even if that is the plan, which seems like a weird and odd plan, doesn't actually change Reb's circumstances in a meaningful way, and he is obviously miserable living this life he's living. Like, he's using alcohol to stay numb and all that kind of stuff. I suppose his plan might be to get Michael put away in prison as like a just dessert, and then get Wade killed in some way, shape, or form, and then it's just him and his mom on a killing spree together. Even that, not 100% meeting Reb's needs, but I guess we'll see where this goes. Interesting that even as Michael goes out into the woods to bury Misty, he still thinks the oldest child went to live with Grandma and Grandpa, and that she just didn't come back because she was afraid of Mama, not because she's dead. Why can he not mentally pair up the rage and violence he saw of that night with what just happened to Misty? Maybe he's in denial, maybe it's traumatic for him, maybe this is just a convenient way for him to think for the story. It's not lining up for me. It feels like Michael is being deliberately obtuse right now. Reb is basically telling him their older sister is dead, has always been dead, and he just refuses to acknowledge this. First, by not understanding the reference to who's gonna read Winnie the Pooh now, which to be fair, Michael might not remember, but then by him thinking losing a sister to distance isn't the same as losing one to death. Like, why does he not understand that both the sisters are dead by Mama's hands? Okay, so I am here at the climax, 82% in, where we're at Michael's birthday and Lucy and Alice are there kind of like tied up and they expect Michael to kill Lucy. But just like a chapter previously, Reb said that Lucy was not the kind of girl he usually reels in because she's the kind of girl who will be missed. So again, I guess I have to ask what the end game is here. Is the goal here to have Michael kill these two girls and frame all the serial killing on him so the Morrows can like disappear and continue this someplace else? Has the heat gotten to be too much in this location? Is some other initiation what's about to be planned, and are they going to use these two girls as replacements for the daughters that the mom has killed previously? Like, part of me does wonder if any of the children in the Morrow household were ever this lady's biological children. I know they all have sandy blonde hair, but it seems like they haven't had a lot of trouble finding people with sandy blonde hair in the area for Mama to kill, so I guess they could be abducting children with similar attributes as well. The fact that I don't understand what the larger purpose here is really cutting through the tension or any difficulty that Michael is have dealing with the situation, because instead of me being right there with him, being really tense and like, how are you gonna get out of this one? I'm like, no, really, why are we doing this? I just got through chapter 26 and Michael has finally caught up to where I have been this whole time. Alice is his sister, the woman that he helped kill and later ate was his mom. Reb knew this the whole time and had planned this from the start, a very long con. And now he's picked up an axe and is planning to kill all of the Morrows. Although I guess it's too late for him at this point in time, no matter how things play out, because he killed Lucy, Alice's best friend, and there's not any coming back from that. And Misty Dawn is dead. There's no bringing that back. Even Laura Lynn, she's not coming back. I'm 88% of the way there. I'm gonna finish it, but I don't know that there's gonna be a great conclusion to this one. And welcome back. I lost battery for the last little bit, but I have officially finished Brother by Ania Ahlborn, and I think I can definitively say that I just don't like Ania Ahlborn's writing. It's fine if you're just looking for graphic, shocking horror. The character of Michael just feels completely like foreign and unrelatable to me. Even Reb, to a certain extent, like I get he was mad about Laura Lynn and he blamed Michael. By that own set of logic, he should blame himself because he's the one who put Michael in the family. And I still think it's super weird that the whole family went along with like abducting a kid and initiating them into the family as a replacement for a dog. Not that I don't love my puppies. Stealing a dog versus stealing a kid are two very different things. I guess I am glad that he dies at the end. I don't really care enough about Alice one way or the other for her to be final last girl bait for me, or for her to like die trying to get into the Oldsmobile. I guess I'm glad that the whole cannibal serial killer family gets killed. It's not a super spoiler that this happens. This is kind of like a very predictable ending to like these sort of slasher horror style films or stories. I think I'm gonna need to look up a couple other people's reviews from Brother to see like what it was they liked or what they thought was like so wild or crazy or like really made them fall in love with Ania Ahlborn, because like for me right now, I think it's just proving that this is not the kind of genre for me. Like, if you're looking for shocking twists with a lot of like splatterpunk gore stuff, I think Least of My Scars by Stephen Graham Jones does it really well. But like, compare this to Least of My Scars and it doesn't even begin to hold a candle. Even though there were quite a few female characters in here, most of them were victims and they all felt very alien to me. I just don't really know what was motivating them or driving them. The male characters were more humanized, but obviously since they were bad guys, we're not supposed to super relate to them. Michael just being a mystery to me the whole time, perhaps intentionally clueless and stupid for his own self-protection until the end. I think the inclusion of S.A. into this story was entirely unneeded and inappropriate and kind of there just like for shock value. It makes me feel like it was sort of gross and exploitative above and beyond what needed to happen in a genre like this. I'm glad I read it because it is the one book that everyone always talks about when they talk about Ania Ahlborn and how this made them like a believer and a huge fan of her work, and now I know that I never have to read anything from her ever again. I'm also really glad I picked this up while it was on Kindle Unlimited, so it was sort of like included in the price of my book budget just to start. It was kind of unpleasant and mean, but this was a good time for me to read it because I'll be rolling into the Paranormal Love in the Night readathon soon, so I'm gonna get all of my fill of like happily ever after feel-good romances in a short little bit. I don't know if this is what people wanted or hoped for in a reading vlog of this book. This is all I've got for you. Thanks for coming with me on this journey. I hope that it wasn't terribly boring. If you've got this far, I think the secret emoji is gonna be a butcher knife this time. And as always, keep reading.